Identical twins. What's the craziest way which you've abused your powers of mistaken identity? My dad is an identical twin. When he was dating my mom in college, he used to play a game with his twin. He would call my mom and part way through the conversation hand the phone off to my uncle. My uncle would see how long he could carry the conversation before he had to tap out and hand the phone off to my dad. Anyways, the first time my mom ever said I love you to my dad, she was actually talking to my uncle. My uncle faltered, and that was when my mom realized what had been happening. They must have straightened everything out, because they ended up married and had me. But seriously, what a colossal strategic error on my dad's part. Okay, I got a great one, but in typical Reddit fashion, it's my grandfather's story, not mine. My father's father had an identical twin, and they both were in the Air Force. First trick was that my grandfather was blind in one eye due to a childhood accident while running with scissors. His brother went and took his physicals for him, but they caught them just before pilot training. Fast forward, they are both active duty during World War II, and one is stationed in California, while the other is stationed somewhere at a U.S. base in the Pacific. My grandfather, Earl, was the guy who would put pilots in their cockpit and make sure it was sealed correctly before they took off. Mind you, these pilots are flying the fastest aircraft manufactured at the time, and nonetheless, my grandfather tells them right before they leave, "I'll see you when you get there," with a wink. His brother, with the same last name, imagine Private Swenson, or whatever, was the guy who wouldn't do the cockpit for the pilots after they landed in the Pacific, and he would say to them, "Hey, you made it. I got here pretty fast, huh?" Producing the most astonished look of bewilderment and amazement one could muster. They ran this joke for quite some time and even got written up in the newspaper about it later on. I thought it was such a great old joke. Hope you guys liked it. I'm reminded of a story I saw here on Reddit about a really old man was with his wife for like 50 years. Eventually ends up passing away without ever having told anyone he had an identical twin. So his brother shows up to the funeral and chaos ensues. Not my story, unfortunately, but I knew a pair of identical twins in high school who fucked with people all the time. I quickly learned how to tell the difference out of self-defense, and they always gave me grief for ruining their fun. We'll call them Steve and Dave. Anyway, here's a story they told me. At their tiny high school, they were both starters on the football team. One was the running back, and the other the fullback. For 4 years, Dave blocked for Steve, as Steve got the yards, the touchdowns, and the records. In the final game of their senior year, they switched jerseys without telling their coach, and for one game, Steve blocked for Dave. Dave set the school's single game rushing record under Steve's name. Because they were blabbermouths, the story got out, and the coach was pissed at them for lying, and for making him look like he'd put the wrong brother at running back the whole time. My favorite story from another time this question was asked. My twin brother and I went to different colleges, and didn't generally reveal to the friends we made that we each had a twin. One day a group of people approached me in the street, calling me by my brother's name, and asking me if I would like to join them in the pub. I knew that my twin brother was already at the pub, so I said I'd bet them free drinks if I beat them to the pub in a foot race, even if I gave them a head start. They agreed and ran off at top speed, while I stood there casually checking my watch and buffing my fingernails on my lapel, only for them to arrive exhausted and find me standing at the bar, drink already in hand. Credit to you/Lawbly. My sister and I were handed each other's picture forms on our senior year picture day in high school. We thought it might be funny to not switch them back, take each other's yearbook/school id card pictures, and have few people know we did it. Harmless shenanigans, right? Then one day at the end of the year, after SAT/SAP tests and collage applications were all over, I got called into the principal's office. This had never happened to me before, and I had no idea why on earth I would be called down, since I hadn't gotten into any trouble. I get there, and my sister has already arrived, and I'm just like, oh shit. Principal sits us down and tells us that, when cross-referencing our school-id photos and the driver's licenses we provided at the SAT, College Board found a discrepancy and was investigating the possibility that we may have taken each other's tests. I hadn't even thought about that being a possibility, and all the blood went to my stomach. My sister and I freaked out, and as calmly as we could tried to explain what we thought was a harmless prank. But he kept a straight face and insisted that, if there was any possibility that we had switched tests, our scores could be invalidated. After about 10 minutes of explaining and reasoning with him about how we'd comply with any investigation, but we swear we took our own tests and so on, he calmly told us it was all a joke. I felt like I was going to pass right out. He was laughing his ass off and saying things like "got you good" and reassuring us that everything was fine and that we should go back to class. Turns out that, since we have family in the school district, the principal had heard that my sister and I switched and decided it would be brilliant to make us think our futures were in danger. In his defense, it was objectively a fantastic prank, and his delivery was so level and authoritative it at no point occurred to us that College Board doesn't reference yearbook photos to confirm identities. Props to him for creativity, but what goes around comes around. This doesn't really go along with abusing my powers of mistaken identity so much as going out of my way to not be mistaken as my twin sister. She dated some Douchinazel in high school who literally could not tell us apart at all. He began pursuing her, but since he was an idiot he didn't even really take the time to get to know the differences between us two. He would mistakenly hug me, or be flirty or check me out, or call me my sister's name, all while my twin was standing 1 foot away. It became too awkward for me to the point where I just completely ignored his presence and didn't make eye contact when he was around, so that he would finally stop mixing us up. Sometimes that didn't work, so I would immediately sarcastically insult him and throw in a couple dudes and brothers to solidify the fact that I was the non-romantic twin. Even then, this dipshit couldn't read the flashing signs, so I just started to turn around and just walk away whenever he approached. He eventually picked up that his twin was the one who wasn't a complete bitch to him. My brother went to a job interview pretending to be me. He got the job, and I've been working there for just over a year now. I had a friend who had an identical twin, and they both spent the first month of university. They went to the same school, convincing everybody that there was actually 3 of them, and that they were triplets. By the time they decided to come clean, nobody would believe them, that there wasn't a third of them around somewhere. You can't trick me, I've hung out with Luke countless times. Honestly, being an identical twin is not so much about cool pranks as it is responding to people who ask why are you so nice in chemical class then totally ignore me when I try to talk to you in English. Or this most common problem. Guy, hey, what's up? Love the new hair. Internal me, do I know this guy? I didn't do anything special to my hair. Who are you? Why can't I remember anyone is? Me, hello. Guy, how brutal was that test the other day, right? Internal me, maybe he's in my psych class. Wait, did we even have a test? Maybe just go along with it. Me, totally. I'm so screwed for next week. Guy, next week? The final's not until the end of the quarter? *internal me. Oh no, he thinks I'm A. Should I say something? That'd be awkward. I'll look like an idiot for pretending to know him. He might get embarrassed. Maybe I can just wing it and no one will have to know I'm me. At this point in the conversation I decide if I should continue to be my twin or reveal myself. This is definitely my fault, in part, because I'm so bad at remembering faces. People in my classes, people at bars, people from past classes. I'll meet people on a smoke break and find out that, to my surprise, they've been sitting the next table over from me for a few weeks. Add twinliness into the mix and it's so awkward. Imagine at the Izzy waving at me feeling all the time I get that plus a conversation. If they ask for help or make it obvious that they just want to chat, I tell them I'm the twin. I saved this story from a similar thread. My dad has an identical twin brother. This is his famous story. My family is Iranian, and it is mandatory for young men to serve in the army for a minimum of 2 years. They do have few exceptions. For example, if your eyes are very weak and you can't see without glasses, then you don't have to serve. My dad had the weaker eyes between the two of them, so he failed his own exam. He took his brother's ID to the army offices and failed the exam again to get his brother out of that responsibility. Credit to you/Persian version 96. While in Iraq, I signed all my legal rights over to my brother. That give him legal rights to my bank account. When my family was in financial trouble, I gave the okay for my brother to take money out of my account. The bank refused to honor the legal document and would not let my brother take money out. Next day he went to the same bank with my passport and took the money out of my account. This will need some backstory. My wife is a twin. Her sister and her both worked at the same camp. My wife worked at the camp during the school year, while my sister-in-law worked during the summer when there was a lot more staff. Basically they were trading places all the time, but staff of the camp would change during those times as well. Summer staff vs not summer staff, so it was never really an issue. My wife worked mostly in the kitchen, while her sister worked as a counselor. Generally the two were never seen together when they were both working there. It should also be said that my sil was often mistaken for a few other people around camp anyway, which only helped the situation in the end. At the end of the week, the groups of campers would do skits. One group of campers decided their skit would be about a machine that would multiply things. So, my sil decided to help them out. The skit came down to the campers saying that my sil was such a hard worker that she needed a clone to help out around camp. At this point the campers in this particular group knew about her twin, but most of the other campers did not. They turned on their machine and put my sil in. Out came her and a boy that had the same hair color and style, but that wasn't quite right. They got rid of the boy and put her back in. Out came a girl with different hair color, but at least it was a girl this time. Next the machine spit out a girl with the right hair color, but not quite the same build. The fourth time, the machine spits out my wife, being a nearly identical twin. This basically blew the audience away.